You're listening to Beyond the List, the podcast dedicated to high school coaches who work their tails off every day. This episode is proudly sponsored by All American Specialties, based in Beaufort, Georgia, a trusted brand since 1972 for custom branded apparel, promotional gear, awards, and spirit wear, designed to unite teams and communities. Scott McIntyre and his team at All American Specialties deliver quality craftsmanship and personalized service. Everything from awards to signs and banners to apparel and other promotional products. Whether you're rewarding your MVP or outfitting your entire roster, they've got options that fit every budget and boost team pride. Reach out to Scott McIntyre and his team at All American Specialties to see how they can help you out this season. Now, stay tuned for this week's episode of Beyond the List.
Welcome back. This is Billy with Coach Dooley's List, and today we are on the top of, where are we?
Dowdell's Knob.
Dowdell's Knob, and
Georgia.
Eat your heart out, Matt Hornsby.
That's right.
But before I even get started, we're here with Brandon Jenkins from Harris County Softball, and it started making me think of all the cool places I've gotten to go. Where's the coolest place you've gotten to go with softball before?
Man, I was thinking about that the other day. We've been to some really cool places. I got to take that all-star team down to Dominican Republic that you introduced me to a few years ago with AIST. And but just with clinics and stuff. I mean, we've been to Nashville, we've been to Atlantic City, we've been all over the place. So it's been pretty awesome.
Well, this is amazing, and if you can't see, I'll take a picture and put it in the thing. But yeah, this is cool, and I will thank Coach Hornsby for this because that's how we ended up here. But anyways, Coach, I always start by just asking, tell everybody, your coaching journey and how you ended up at Harris County.
Okay, yeah. So I'm a coach's son. My dad was a high school coach for 30 years in Columbus, Georgia. Coached mainly basketball and football, and then the last 5 years in Columbus, he took over softball and coached my sister. And so obviously he had a big impact, on my life and my decision to become a coach. And then played high school baseball for Bobby Howard at Columbus High School, and his head assistant coach was Ed Oliver, who's big in the softball community and part of the Georgia Dugout Club Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And so, those three guys right there just, really had a huge impact on my life and kind of pushed me in that direction of becoming a coach. So, started at Northside High School 2010, 2011, and started with baseball and did that for 3 or 4 years. And then, the head job came available, and my high school principal, told me to, it'd be a good stepping stone. And so, obviously, I jumped on that and, ended up giving up baseball for softball. So at Northside, I was there for 11 seasons. And then, we live in Harris County. I have 3 teenagers, twin boys that are going to be juniors at Harris County. Both play baseball, one plays football, and then a little girl that's going to be a sophomore who's a cheerleader. And so they were born and raised in Harris County and have spent their whole lives here. And so the opportunity came available to come up here and not only coach, be the head softball coach, but also to get back into baseball. So now I'm assistant coach with Tony Dimitri up there on the baseball team too.
Awesome. And, family always leads you where you need to be, along with God. And, I always ask coaches, you got to coach, you got into it because your dad, and you've got to coach with some good coaches. And then, you go to Northside and you kind of formulate what you want your program to be. So what do you want people to know about your program at Harris County?
Well, and just watching a lot of your episodes with these other coaches, the running joke with coaches is everything we do, we steal from somebody else.
Absolutely.
Listening to Hornsby, I like what he said. Ours is, I guess, attention to details, and we just don't want to be caught off guard. There have been so many times we get down to Columbus or, something's going on, and, I look at the other coaches and say, well, we didn't work on that, and so just we try to take pride into making sure we get in those game situations and we're just not caught off guard. And so that we're just, prepared for any situation that can come up. And again, that's through trial and error. That's through Hornsby running the bases on us and making us look like fools right before we go to Columbus. And then we go back and say, hey, we need to work on this before we get to Columbus or we're going to get embarrassed.
And then too, talking about working on things, I was talking to a coach earlier and we discussed stealing home to win a game in the 10th inning, and down in Columbus, and coaches talk, and I remember everybody going, "They stole home to win the game in the 10th," and I go, "Who?" And they said, "Is it Jenkins and Northside?" I said, "What?" And then I think me and you talked, and you said, "Yeah, you're a genius if it works, but you're not if it doesn't." But it goes back to preparation. Those are things you've worked on, and you work on them for those situations. You're not going to steal home every game.
No.
But being prepared is always great. So
absolutely.
And coming from Northside, obviously a great career there, and started off with a bang at Harris County. How many rings you got now?
Harris County makes 4.
4, which is awesome.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
And you have great stories of obviously on the softball field and stuff, but sometimes our favorite stories don't always have to do with winning. But, give me 1, 2. What are some of your favorite stories from coaching?
Well, this will be a kick. So my favorite story is my first year. So we're at Northside. We go up to play Noonan in a JV varsity doubleheader, and it's probably the second, third game of the year. And so the JV's playing first, and I'm still nervous trying to get everything. It's first time on the road, and so I've got 2 assistants at the time, and so our JV pitcher's warming up. She's getting loose, and I walk up to our assistant coach, and I said, "Keisha, how's she look?" And she said, "Coach, she's cramping pretty bad, but she'll be okay." And I said, "All right." And so I go back to the dugout, and finish writing the lineup and stuff. And then I go to the concession stand, and I asked the lady at the concession stand, I said, "Hey, can I have some mustard?" And she kind of looks at me funny. And I said, I got one of my players who's got cramps, just need, some mustard. So she gives me some mustard, and I go back, and the young lady finishes, pitching. She's sitting in the dugout, and I sit beside her. I said, "Hey, how you feel?" She's like, "I think I'll be okay." And I said, "Well, Coach said you're cramping. It's not going to go away, but here, take this mustard." And she kind of looks at me funny, and she said, "Why would I take this?" And I said, "Well, you're cramping. It'll help with your cramps." And she said, "Well, Coach, how do you know that?" And I said, "Well, we give it to baseball players all the time." And meanwhile, my assistant coach is falling over backwards, laughing in the dugout. And about that time, I realized something was wrong. And she smiled at me, and she said, "Coach, it's not those kind of cramps." So
say no more.
That was the first time as a male coach where I realized I'm coaching females and things work a little bit different. So the running joke the rest of the year was every time we'd go eat at Chick-fil-A or something after the game, they would just bring me mustard packets and set it on the table, and they got a big kick out of it.
You learn a lot doing those things.
There's no doubt.
Sure.
No doubt.
So, if one of your players did come to you today, one of your players or even an assistant coach, and they said, "Coach Jenkins, I think I want to be a head coach one day," what advice would you give them?
A couple things. I listened to a lot of great answers with the other coaches, and a few things come to mind. One is just as I said earlier, everything we steal from other coaches. Right. So be open-minded and try to get out there and network with as many coaches as you can network with. Go to clinics. Build that into your booster club or whatever for financing to get to the clinics. We go to the one with Macon every year with JACA. We go to the one in Atlanta with Georgia Dugout Club. There's also national clinics, and they do a lot of more centralized locations with those now. But the more you can go to, the better. If you've got any colleges in town or close by, Coach H at Columbus State, I'll sit down with him and just, pick his brain and just try to be open-minded and learn as much as you can from these other coaches. And then, again, just ask questions. Don't be afraid. There aren't any stupid questions. And, I'm learning now as I've been 12 years and, to coaching now coaches are reaching out to me, which is an honor, and it's very humbling. But what I'm trying to do, is just help them, the same way, some of these older coaches helped me when I got started.
Yeah, and I always say if it wasn't for the Tanya Sebrings and the Debbie Balls and the Garrett Blacks, that the list goes on and on. Like I wouldn't have been able to do what I did. So
right,
yeah, definitely find your mentor, find somebody who does things that you like, and get help with it.
Absolutely,
we got to keep learning. And it kind of leads us always into the last question. We may have some visitors here, but. Every coach, one of the big ideas behind Coach Dooley's list is trying to help coaches out, just to connect them with vendors. And my first, I get here today and I've got me another new shirt and got me a new hat. We got some fans. How y'all doing? And so we got these, and these things come from somewhere. So you always ask coaches, who do you work with your program that you would, if somebody called and said, hey, I need this or I need that, who would you shout out?
Yeah, so the first one is Joey Browning. Joey Browning, I've known him since I was little. He actually called on my dad a lot. He does most of the high schools in the Columbus and surrounding areas. And he's with Columbus Trophy. And he does everything. Yep. Yes, sir. And he does everything from apparel to softballs to spray paint. And he's just that guy, you know, he'll take care of you, but then, you know, you realize 2 hours before the game that you're out of spray paint, you can call him up and he'll find a way to get it to you.
Awesome.
And then another one is Stephen Worrell. Stephen Worrell is with Cover Sports. He does all our windscreens. So we had windscreens put across our outfield, but he also did the netting behind the backstop, and has just always been good to us. And you know, he makes things right, and then the timetable that he puts on things is great too.
I love it. And, you know, again, they're both on the website. I'll put their links down in the comments below wherever you're finding this at. But Coach, I appreciate you bringing me up here. I appreciate your friendship, and thanks for doing this.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.